Lillard working exit. Drives to the right hand. Flares to Aldridge. Bounces to Matthews. Touches back to Aldridge. Blocked by Booker. Flipped down the air by Gobert. He passes ahead to Trevor. And Captain Crunch will flush it. Timeout. Portland. Listen to the crowd.
This is Gordon Hayward. We are ready to tip it off. Are you? Let's do this.
Ready for a Monday edition of Tip Off. The Jazz, absolutely brilliant, then get the weekend off. The NBA taking form as we head to the final 30 games all around the league. Great stuff, top to bottom on a Monday edition of Tip Off. Pow. Hello, hope you're well. Thanks so much for tuning in and grabbing this, whether it's via iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you may be. I wanted to thank you. Some of the numbers that we put up during trade deadline were astronomical. So obviously a huge amount of interest, but also great trust on your part that what we, me, myself, I guess, are doing over here is in this little messy office is, worthwhile. So thank you so much. Appreciate your passion, your faith, your belief. Our numbers outside of the state of Utah are growing immensely. I appreciate that as well for all you fans around the NBA who have another favorite team other than the Utah Jazz, but are finding what we do worthwhile. That's much appreciated as well. You can follow me on Facebook at David Locke or Locked On Sports. David Locke's kind of my light, things going on in my life, though I try not to overdo it. Locked On Sports is sports stuff. Twitter is at Locked On Sports. Google Plus is a good place too. We have built the Locked On Sports Google Plus community. I'm really proud of what a lot of the guys, Spencer and Ryan and done. Concept there is article about Utah sports or NBA or draft that you think is interesting. You post it. Start leaving your comment thread and let's get everyone to talk about it. So thanks very much for all of you who have been a part of that as well. The way we do this every day is I hit you with the NBA 5 first, which is 5 minutes of national NBA news, and then we dig deep on the Utah Jazz, and we wrap it up usually by taking your questions, which you can post once the event page is up, which I try to tweet out for you every day. We got a ton today, so I'm going to try to get to them really quickly. So right now, let's hit the NBA 5.
This is Rudy Gobert, and you are Locked On Jazz.
Grizzlies beat Portland last night, looked fabulous doing it. Portland's without Aldridge. Portland doesn't look good, actually, but Grizzlies won that quarter 35-15. What's telling is the Grizzlies' record against above 500 teams shows you how good they are and how much they are separating from the rest of the league right now. They are 20-9, now 21-9 against teams 500 or above. It's not elegant. You watch them, you wonder if they have a go-to play. There's all sorts of things you think are wrong with Memphis, but none of them really are because their defense is so stifling. Portland threw up 5 air balls in the final 3 minutes of the game. And Portland then runs a nice, simple Conley to Gasol pick and roll. Gasol ends up with 8 in the fourth quarter, and they run away from you. So Memphis looks every bit that real. The Warriors do too, but they have to have Steph Curry. They lost last night to Indiana. Something we've talked about before is that the Warriors are plus 17 points per 100 possessions with Steph Curry on the floor and just 0.4 with him off. They have to have Steph Curry. Steph's really the MVP. I think Westbrook's making an incredible run for it right now. The way Oklahoma City's playing without Durant, who's out another week or two with a foot injury. But I think it's got to be Steph. I think James Harden's making a run out of I think Westbrook's making a run. I think LeBron's back in it. Cleveland's won 16 of 18, by the way, and looks really every bit the NBA champion, actually. I'm not sure anyone's beating Cleveland because I think they'll have the best player on the floor, and that usually does it, though last year it didn't do it against the Spurs. A Warriors-Cleveland final would be absolutely incredible. Enes Kanter has been great in 2 games for Oklahoma City, and honestly, I'm very excited for this because I know Enes well. I like the guy. There's 2 things about Enes. One, he needs this really badly. Maybe more so than any athlete I've ever covered. Enes needs success. Enes is also a pure momentum guy. If things are going well, he's right on the bus. If things aren't going well, he's not at a stage in his career where he deals with that very well. So last night it was 20 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists. He was really good against Denver. Denver looked awful. Kenneth Faried was horrible. Pure energy, guys. This is where Millsap's evolution is so terrific. Pure energy guys are very risky because at some point they lose their energy. It's just too hard a league. Undersized energy guys are even more unlikely to maintain because they're being overwhelmed physically every night. And that's, to me, what's happened to Kevin Freed, whereas Millsap, contrastingly, has just changed his game, evolved into a different player. I criticized him a little bit when he was here because he had stopped rebounding. He really become a totally different player. He was so right to do it. And frankly, I'm not sure if I criticized him or just commented on it. But, I mean, last night, Millsap carries the Hawks with 23 and 16. He still gets 8 offensive rebounds, but he's added an element to his game off the dribble, off the bounce, with the shooting, where he doesn't have to be a pure energy guy. Generally speaking, energy guys, undersized energy guys, have nice blips on the radar screen but are not sustainable in this league. And that's a great, and you saw that Kevin Freed looked awful. It's a great tribute to what is taking place with Paul Millsap. And, look around the league, you probably can find other guys who either have done it correctly or have not done that. Kanter has 5 assists in his 2 games with the Thunder. He had 5 assists in his last 570 minutes with us. He threw an over-the-head outlet pass last night that it would never. Oh, I take it back. He has 6 assists now. He added 1 more last night. No, he had 3 last night, 2 the night before. 5 assists. He threw an over-the-head outlet pass to Ibaka that would have never crossed his mind before. He really looks like a totally different player. They did some nice things with him. They ran some basic cross screens to him where he caught it early and they got the ball to him. And he did some things well. The only real thought that I had that was a major concern from a Jazz standpoint is, a guy like Kanter has never played with a point guard. That's been good. Kanter's run is Devin Harris, Mo Williams, Trey Burke. That's the one area where maybe Ennis did not evolve as well as he could have here because of just not having a point guard that can distribute the basketball to people. Certainly, Devin Harris and Mo Williams, there's a reason why Mo's now played for 8 teams in like 6 years. And as nice a guy as he is, there's parts of his game they're lacking. That's watching Ennis in Oklahoma City the last 2 games. That's the real Jazz concern that I have. Is did they somehow, the lack of a point guard play, mean that you missed something on him? Now, in fairness, he played Charlotte and he knows Al Jefferson well, who's probably as basic there is to event. He played a terrible Denver team. Let's see what happens when they start playing better teams. But he looks great, and I'm really excited for him. His mid-range game, which I still think he's got to get going at some point. He was 1 of 3 the first game from his mid-range game, and in the second matchup against Denver, with their really they don't have any bigs that are going to cause you any problems. He only took 1 shot outside the restricted area and he made it. He stayed inside, so he's playing the game correctly. He's playing with fabulous energy. Steve Novak even was quoted after the game and said, "This is a totally different player than I've seen before." It's eye-opening, frankly. I don't know if he can maintain this, but it's eye-opening how differently he's playing in Oklahoma City, the energy, the zest, than what he's doing here. Might have really been miserably unhappy, and I think then that relates to something we saw early from the Jazz. We'll touch on that next as we move out of the NBA 5. Oh, before we do that, Richard Jefferson last night started 10 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists last night, and an awesome dunk you got to see on Vine that they called an offensive foul. But it's still an awesome dunk.
This is Rodney Hood, and you are locked on Jazz.
Jazz were brilliant against Portland, simply as good as I've seen them play all year long. Defensively stifling. Damian Lillard never got a rhythm. LaMarcus Aldridge certainly never got a rhythm. Third quarter, LaMarcus Aldridge against Rudy Gobert, it's almost as though he cashed out. And the Jazz held the Blazers to 19 points in the second, 16 points in the third, 17 points in the fourth quarter. An incredible 3-quarter defensive display, and then a 20-2 run to open the fourth quarter that was led actually by mostly rookies. That Elijah Millsap hit a few threes. Rodney Hood hit one. Dante even hit a 3. So really terrific effort in so many ways by the Jazz. But the key to the whole game, a little bit, is, in my opinion, was Trey Burke. It's not a brilliant night. This is actually frankly, if I'm going to be totally honest, this is one of the things that concerns me the most about Trey Burke, is that on a night where I think he was as good as I've seen him, he still finishes 9 of 20, 20 shots for 19 points. It's not great. But Trey showed, first of all, Portland allows you to run the pick and roll from the top, which got Favors going. And I think if you remember, if you have a long-time tip-off, we watched a 3-play, 4-play pick-and-roll sequence from the last time we played Portland where Trey really handled it well. This is a matchup that Trey deals with very, very well. It's why Portland probably is going to have a problem in the playoffs. And he hit Favors on the rolls early, and then he started to hit that floater. And this is important because if Trey Burke is going to evolve as a point guard into the NBA who's sustainable, then he's got to find – there's a few aspects to his game that he's got to figure out. One of them is he's last in the NBA in field goal percentage on drives. Dion Waiters just in Oklahoma City is worse, but Trey is last in the NBA on field goal percentage on drives. So when he, in that game, starts hitting these little floaters, that's off a drive. That's not something he does with any regularity. His shooting percentage in the paint non-restricted area is 28%. Okay, that's not good enough. You can't be last in the NBA in field goal percentage on drives, and those are related, frankly. I'm not piling on. I think it's just another way to say the same thing. And I could do it a third way by talking about, what his field goal percentage is in the restricted area. It's 47.7%. Last year, I may have taken this out of my notes. I did. He's 47.7% in the restricted area, which is about where he was last year. He's got to develop that game. Now, that takes some time. That's part of the evolution of the NBA. I think, what happens is you come in the NBA, you try it, you can't do it. So then you try to see if you can survive without it. Then you realize you got to add this new element, but you don't have it yet. And then you eventually kind of evolve into doing it. That's why Brandon Knight and Brandon Jennings and Jeff Teague and, they're all Eastern Conference, but also Mike Conley, frankly, these point guards have evolved late. You give up on a point guard early, it's really a trouble. But the Jazz brilliance the other night, to me, was because they got point guard play. The Jazz have been playing with the 29th or 30th level of point guard play all season long, and so they finally got some point guard play, and that just sucked the court in, and that opened up all sorts of everything for people. That's to me what happened. The defense the Jazz have been playing has been very, very good and was a lead against Portland. Realize we're a 500 team. We're talking about the various steps you can take, right? So we were 25 wins last year. We're going to hit 40 next year, I think, because that's who we are now. For the last 30 games, I think we're 14 and 16. If you look at our rankings, we're 15th offensively, 15th defensively. We're over the last 34 games, we're 17th offensively and 17th defensively. The last 5, we're a little better than that. We're 14 and 15 over the last 29. We're getting there. Defensive rating is below league average for 30 straight games. We've become an acceptable defensive team with growth to be even better. And then when you put the players back together in another year with Quinn, you're going to be a 40-win team next year. And actually, it was interesting. I was talking to Terry Stotts about Portland's a top 10 defensive team this year. And I was like, how did you do this? And he said, everyone's just referencing our number of last year compared to our number this year and talking about our huge defensive improvement. He says, if you look at what we did a year ago, we were terrible defensively start. And then by the end of the year, he said, if you took our last 30 games, we were about 11th or 12th. So that was the only step we had to take, was to go from 11th to 12th to 5th or whatever we were. We weren't really going from 27th to 5th, as everybody likes to talk about. So we were pretty good defensively by the end of the year last year. So that carried over and we got even a little bit better. That's where the Jazz are as well. And that's really the big deal. I just realized that we've gotten – oh, wait, no, my kids get to sleep a little bit later because I'm taking them to school today. So we're okay. I suddenly realized it was 6:42 and I thought we were in a bit of trouble. Or I was going to be in trouble. I think my kids get to sleep in a little bit today. Let's see. Let me see if I had anything else in my notes on the energy was great. We'll see if this lasts, but I will say since the trade, the energy at practice and the energy of the team has been at a higher level. Maybe Ennis was so unhappy that he was an energy suck. I don't know. I'd be surprised. That's hard for me to evaluate because I like Ennis. But he wasn't particularly close with anyone in that locker room. That's certainly true. And so maybe just his grumpiness was energy sucking coaches and players a little bit more than we knew at the time. And now he's totally rejuvenated where he is. Maybe it's a win-win. We'll see. It's very short in the sample size to be able to make pure evaluations on that. Final other note, Gordon Hayward's doing some neat things. Always worth mentioning just because we don't want to start taking him for granted. The one that surprised me last night, I was looking at a bunch of stats view, which I'll be tweeting out later for you, which is but Gordon Hayward is the 6th best catch and shoot effective field goal percentage in the NBA. The only guys better than him right now are Kyle Korver, Eric Gordon in New Orleans, J.J. Redick in L.A., Jared Dudley in Milwaukee, very underrated, Courtney Lee in Memphis, very underrated, and Gordon Hayward. The real step then the Jazz need is they need someone with the ball who can get Gordon, right, who creates on their own to get Gordon some of those looks. This might be why Gordon's play since Dante's moved into the starting lineup has improved. Because there's somebody who may be creating a little bit more to get him some of those looks. Not sure that Dante's doing a lot of creation. But, I mean, the month of February, Gordon's 23 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 51% and 46 from 3. 5 3 attempts, 5 free throw attempts as well. These are big-time numbers. All right, let's get out to the questions. Your thoughts on Dennis Linley's comments in relation to the offseason, realistic expectations for what the Jazz might do from Dallas. Dallas does a lot of work on Locked On Sports Google Plus community. I was interested in the fan reaction to when Dennis mentioned the idea of possibly doing something in free agency, how much the fans jumped on it. I guess, the patient rebuild, the patience is wearing out. Is kind of the level that I got from some of the fan base. So I was more taken back that I think free agency is going to be hard for the Jazz because I think as many as 20 teams are going to have $10 million of cap space. But maybe we'll find the right mix. I suspect the Jazz will make their big offseason move on draft night, if they can. That you'll see the Jazz take the 7th pick and trade it for a player, trade the 7th pick for a player and the 17th pick or something like that. That's what I would suspect that you see. I don't know how the Jazz get a major thing done in free agency. Everyone wants to talk about Paul or Wesley or guys coming back or just anyone, Aaron Aflalo. But I think it's difficult to get those guys to come to Utah when they have a lot of other choices because we're on the upswing, but we're not there. And so it's a very hard sell. Casey, what will Hood's minute restriction look like over the next week or so? How long until he can play regular minutes? I don't know. I think that's going to be based on how his feet feel, and I think it actually could be very conservative. There seems to be, obviously a reoccurring problem, and so it doesn't seem. It seems to be, something we probably need to be careful of making sure he doesn't end up, overburdening. Another setback would be too bad at this point. Recently, Gobert being on the floor hasn't had a large impact defensively. Could that be because the team's focusing on attacking wings where we are the weakest instead of the paint? Gobert is still posting great numbers protecting the rim. He sure is. He's at 39%, I think, number 1 in the NBA. That's from Gabriel. He might be playing better players. Scouting reports might be out on him. Teams are learning to pump fake him. I think we're going to be really good defensively with Rudy and Derek. We also probably need to now learn how to play exactly defensively with Rudy and Derek over that time period. So I think I just think it's part of the process, right? I mean, I think you also had some small sample size stuff that now is equaling out to probably where it should be. To me, it's exciting that the team's defensive numbers aren't vastly different with Gobert off the floor because it means to me that the whole conceptual stuff they're doing defensively is happening. I mean, they made a pretty significant shift in the way they played defense on December 8th against after that Sacramento game, and since then have been about 15th in the league defensively, which is pretty good considering you were 30th last year. Jazz are 15th defensively since the middle of December. Hey, Casey, right on cue. Is it realistic to expect even more improvement? Would it be awesome if they got to 100 or 101 defensive rating to finish out the season? I think we've been 102 or so in December. The run of great offensive teams coming that we will play could derail that, but we also play a whole East Coast stretch. So I don't know. I mean, 100, 101 is really good. We may not be there yet. We're still, by definition, the best defensive teams have a lot of experience, a lot of time on the floor. We're still playing 3 rookies at times. Though Elijah Millsap's defensive numbers, I think I tweeted this out last night, probably should have saved it for today when more people saw it. Over the last 20 games, Elijah Millsap on the floor, the defensive rating is 96.8, with the next closest 101.5 for Dante and 102.3 for Favors. In the 20 games that Millsap has been with the Jazz, the defensive rating when he's on the floor is a 96.8. When he's off, it's a 106.7. Elijah Millsap has taken the role of Rudy Gobert. Again, though, that's mostly playing second-team guys. There's so much noise in that plus-minus stuff. You got to be careful because it has so much to do with the noise that you get from playing starters versus playing bench players. But frankly, Millsap's now staying in games, closing games by playing defense against those guys. He's got to find a way to survive offensively. He is a turnover machine, and he's shooting, I think, about 26% on twos. He's beginning to make threes, but he's got to figure. It'll happen though. I mean, I'm not saying like it's going to end tomorrow, but he's got some time to let that happen. But that's what he's got to do. From Philip, public service for your Aussie fans without League Pass. The NBA Australian site is showing the game on their site free today and tomorrow. Cool. We'll try to get that out there. Have I apologized to Slow Mo Joe for calling him the oldest player on the team when Elijah Millsap is 51 years old? I thought I even put a caveat in there that he basically was the oldest player on the team. But you're right. Definition-wise, Elijah is. Tells you how young we are. You sort of touched on this with Quinn one day. With teams defending from the restricted area three-point line, is there any thought between the best at shooting in between zones might be a tactic? I think it's important. I'm going to try to do some research on it. No matter what you do, 40% of your shots are still going to come in the mid-range, unless you're really Houston. Everybody else is at 40%. And so you better be good on those 40%. You're right. It's a huge part of the game, Philip. If I have some time today or tomorrow, I'll do a little quick nab and see how that plays out. And you still got to make shots, right? Has there ever been work on shooting efficiency beyond the three-point line? For example, are Kyle and Korver and Steph Curry still efficient 3 to 4 feet behind three-point line? Could we see extremely spread in the future? Or a 4-point line? It's interesting. I don't know what's been done on that. I don't know what's been done, but it's an interesting concept, right? If you can increase the gravity that Kevin Pelton talks about and move the guys out even further, then certainly you're onto something. Great questions. Good job. Hope you enjoyed the show. It's Tip-Off. We do it every weekday. It's my pleasure to bring it to you. You can follow us on iTunes. If you get a chance, give us 5 stars on iTunes or Stitcher, whatever podcatcher you catch us on. By the way, if you have any thoughts on Google Plus for Spreecast, let me know what your thoughts are on that. I've heard all the stories about the postcast audio problems between Ron and I. I swear I have no idea what to do about it. I think it might simply be the tones of our voice and how the computer reduces them down, and I don't know if I can fix that. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.